Welcome to another episode of Entrepreneurship Unboxed, your front row seat to the stories, struggles, and secrets behind today's most innovative startups and entrepreneurs. I'm your host, AJ. Our guest today is Michael Janda, an award-winning creative director, designer, agency owner, and author. Michael has been a beacon of innovation in the creative industry, founding the acclaimed agency Riser and authoring books that have become staples in design education worldwide. From his early days at Fox Studios to his strategic leadership at EKR, Michael has a treasure trove of insights to share. I'm excited to dive into his personal journey, unpack his proven business strategies, and learn the key lessons he's picked up along the way. Let's get started. Now, welcome to the show, Mike. Could you give us a quick rundown of your entrepreneurial journey and what inspired you to take the leap into starting your own business?
Good, thank you. I'm excited to chat with you. You have a great little podcast going. Hey, what led me to entrepreneurship? I was an accidental entrepreneur. I was too afraid to do it intentionally. And I started my entrepreneurial journey when I couldn't get a job because in the early 2000s, there was a big tech industry recession. And so much of my background was in web design, just front-end design and front-end coding. And I was looking for jobs everywhere and nobody was hiring. Everybody was laying people off in the internet industry back then. And so I started freelancing. And my freelancing started to turn into hiring people. And then that started to build into my agency. And here I am 22 years later, and I'm a full-blooded entrepreneur. Everything I do is entrepreneurial. I'm like, I don't know why I'm starting half the stuff that I'm doing now, but I can't stop. Once you start to fall in love with the entrepreneurship game, it is hard to turn it off. And it's such a fun, exciting way to have a career.
Mike, from senior creative director at Fox to founding and selling your own agency, Riser, your career has been a series of bold moves. Could you share the pivotal moments that led to these significant changes?
Yeah, the significant changes. So when I was working at Fox, this was during the crazy .com era where everybody was spinning up a new .com company and there was tons of investment money funneling into the internet, but nobody had to show profitability. The investors didn't care. They just thought, we're going to throw money into these technologies and see what happens. And in 2001, maybe 2000 even, the whole bottom fell out of that. And the stock market crashed, especially in the tech industry, and people started to pull their money out. I would have worked at Fox for the next 30 years if it were up to me. I was like, okay, I've got a great job. I'm a creative director and it's Fox, it's Hollywood. It was like the dream. And then all of a sudden, the bottom fell out, and then our division started getting laid off, and then Fox sold our divisions to Disney. And over the course of a year and a half, our team went from 50-something people down to 6 that we were all let go on the last day. So it was just watching all of my friends get laid off, and then waiting for the hatchet to fall on me and for me to get laid off. So when that finally happened, that was a pivotal moment. When that finally happened, I had to make money to provide for my family, and freelancing for some of my friends who had been laid off, freelancing for them is what ended up happening, my way to sustain revenue for my family, to provide for my family. So that was one of those big pivotal moments. Another one was when I sold my agency. So 13 years later, I got to the point where I just felt like I had achieved everything I wanted to as an entrepreneur, as a creative entrepreneur, an agency owner. I had a cool office space, cool studio with glass walls and the dry erase board room and a chalkboard wall and wood floors and exposed beams and all the dream that I always ever had for an agency. I had checked that box. And then I had awesome clients. Our biggest client was Disney. We had done a ton of work for Google and ABC and NBC and Fox and all these great clients. I had checked that box. I had a team of like 15, 18 employees. And I just started to sit back and say, what's left for me that motivates me enough to keep doing this? And I realized that when I had checked all those boxes, money wasn't a motivator for me. I could have kept running my agency and made lots and lots more money doing that, but it wasn't a motivator anymore. I started to look around and say, what do I really love to do? And it was the mentoring, educational side of the creative industry. And that's what I started doing. I started writing books, and then I started creating Instagram content, and then that took off. And then I have been making YouTube content and video content and speaking at conferences and having podcasts and being on podcasts like this with you, AJ. And all of that is what I've loved the most. That's what I'm most passionate about. And I'm grateful that I get to do it with the majority of my time now.
Under your leadership, Riser achieved impressive growth and profitability. What were the key strategies that contributed to sustaining such high profit margins in the competitive creative industry?
That's a really good question too. I was fortunate to have big clients that had big budgets, and I recognized that was a blessing for sure. Every once in a while I had the cheap client come in with a low budget, and you try and figure out how do you provide something for them that can satisfy the needs that they have at the size of budget that they have. But I was really fortunate to have relationships with people at bigger companies that had bigger budgets. So that was helpful. There's no question. And I recognize that. And I recognize that that's not the way that it goes for everybody. But I do believe that any business can be profitable, but you have to price your product or services with intention. A lot of people are creating a business and then they're just choosing the price. They don't have any methodology of why they chose the price that they chose. Now, in my industry, let's say it's just the creative industry that I have worked in my whole career. Let's say you're pricing a logo. What should a logo cost? And you're going to get a different answer from everybody that you talk to because so many people are just choosing the number out of the sky. But in order to have guaranteed profitability, you have to understand, what is it going to cost me to produce this logo that I'm going to make for my client? That's number one that you have to understand. The next one is, what are other people charging for logos? Other people like me, other freelancers in Marrakesh, what are they charging for logo design? You have to understand the industry that you're working in and the location that you're working in and where your client is, and understand the market pricing of the thing you're selling to the client. Because if you want to charge $5,000 for a logo and the other 100 freelancers that you compete with are all charging $500 for the logo, you're out of whack in the market pricing. So you have to understand the market a bit, and that takes research, and it takes time, and it takes talking to other creatives and talking to clients, and over time you get a sense of what that market is. And then you have to understand what your client wants to spend, and it's a little overlapped with market pricing, but you got to understand that if I'm doing a project for Disney to design a logo for Disney, they can spend $10,000 on it. If I'm doing a logo for a startup restaurant in Marrakesh that they're building the entire restaurant using their credit cards and they don't have any capital behind it, they're not going to spend $10,000 on a logo. So you have to understand where your client is in their business and what kind of budgets they want to spend on the thing they're asking you to do. So there's a lot of, in regards to profitability, you got to understand those things so that you can intentionally price your products and services in a way that is profitable. And I find that so many entrepreneurs aren't doing that. They're just kind of guessing. They're just like, I think I'll charge this. And if the client says yes, then I'm happy. They said yes, but they have no idea whether they're going to be profitable at the end of it or not.
In many sectors, including the creative industry, individuals often rely on instinct rather than conducting the necessary market research. For instance, comparing oneself to someone in a vastly different market, like contrasting a situation in Marrakesh with one in New York, could lead to significant missteps.
Yeah, it does not. It does not apply because you're in a different location with different types of clients, different types of value of money is different. You go to one country, and if it's all based on the dollar, the worldwide economy a lot of times is comparison to the value of the dollar. And if you compare one country to another, the local currency is either higher or lower in value than what the American dollar is. So it completely depends on where you are too, on what you should be charging, your location. I mean, there's so many factors that go into it. The guessing is the problem for entrepreneurs. The guessing on pricing is the problem. So going back to the original question you asked is, how do you sustain solid profit margins? Well, you got to be methodical in the way that you price your products and services and not just guess at what that number should be.
That implies that the guessing has to be thrown out of the window.
The guess comes after a methodical analysis. That's what happens. So you do your analysis, you analyze your costs, the market, your client, your competitors, you analyze those things, and then you use your business intuition to choose the price. But it's done after an analysis. So it's not like we just throw away intuition in the way that we run our business. We just do it second to analysis. And a lot of people are taking the analysis and throwing that out and just using their intuition, which may be okay for some, but it may not be good intuition for others. A junior level entrepreneur who's only started in the last few months, they may not have the intuition
definitely
needed. You have to have experience to have that. And that experience comes from doing that analysis, methodical strategies, and then use your intuition to make decisions after that.
Working with high-profile clients like Disney and Google requires a certain level of trust and excellence. How did you build and maintain these valuable relationships over the years?
I learned quickly when I got my job at Fox, and this was in the year 2000, so almost 25 years ago, 24 years ago now. It's crazy. Anyway, when I got my job there, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be working alongside the greatest creative and business people in all the world. That's what I thought. And then I got there and I found that all the people were just normal people, just like I was, just like the people that I worked with at the company I worked with before. And this idea that, I'm going to do work for Google and everybody at Google is like the most amazing person ever. Well, they're great people for sure, but they're really no different or better than the people that you're working with at your jobs right now alongside. And once I understood that, then it was like not as scary at all to build relationships with people inside of these bigger companies, to do work for those people. I understood them just through building a trusting relationship with them. And the way that you build a trusting relationship is exactly the same way that you do it now. AJ, you and I are on a podcast right now. And I know that if I ever found myself in Morocco, that we're going to go to lunch and we're going to be friends, and that connection's already there. That kind of relationship building is the way it's done with any client. It doesn't matter if they're at Disney or if they're starting up a restaurant in Marrakesh. It doesn't matter. It's still relationship building, creating that trusting relationship with another human. That's really all it is. And, there are a lot of people in Marrakesh that if they were in Los Angeles, they would be working at Disney and Warner Brothers and all those places. That's where everybody works in the LA area. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people are tied to the entertainment industry. And they're just in Marrakesh, so they're not working there. They're working at businesses where you are, but they're no different than the people that are in Los Angeles. And so people are people at the end of the day. People are people, and you build trusting relationships, and you realize that everybody's just a normal person trying to do a good job and trying to get their work done and trying to take home their income so that they can have the life that they are choosing to have. That's at the end of the day, that's what it is.
Absolutely, that's a valid point. Sometimes there's a tendency to place individuals from certain industries or companies on a pedestal based on our own perceptions. Yet, when we actually engage with them, it's crucial to remember that they are ordinary human beings. They're just like the people we meet and talk to in our everyday lives.
Yeah, they are. They're just the same people. They're just the same people. And the people in Marrakesh that started a successful restaurant. Do you have a restaurant that you love to go to in Marrakesh that's great food and great experience? Yeah. The person, what's the restaurant called? What's the restaurant that you love there?
Yeah, a restaurant I like. Let's say Bouzine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bouzine. Okay. The person who started that great restaurant that you fell in love with, if you take that exact same person and their entrepreneurial intuition that made them create a successful restaurant there, and you take that and you transfer that exact same person to another business somewhere in the world, could be in the UK, they're in London, great business environment and lots of money in London, and you take that person, they could just as easily as they started a successful restaurant where you are, start a restaurant in London and have great success, because those same exact principles apply. You can't have a great restaurant without understanding customer service, without understanding how to price the product that you're selling, without understanding how to source your ingredients and stuff and get the right margins on that, without having an environment and getting comfortable with a lease or purchasing a restaurant space. All that kind of stuff is just all business stuff. And it applies anywhere you go. And at any level, it's no different. The entrepreneurial mindset and the entrepreneurial requirements to have a big business or a small business, it's really not that different. You've got to get to those core things of understanding marketing and sales and logistics and operations, these kind of core things. And if somebody can do it as a successful restaurant in Marrakesh, they can do it as a successful business of many different kinds anywhere in the world. It's no different.
Great insights as a leader. How did you foster a culture of creativity and innovation within your teams? And how has your approach evolved over time?
Oh, that's a great question too. So I loved that I got to hire creative people. That was my business. It was design and creative thinking and creative strategy. And I loved that we got to hire people like that in our business. And a lot of people are very creative in the world. I would say one of the key things to fostering an environment of creativity and innovation is to not stifle the creative and innovative people that you have on your team. Don't stifle those people. Have them let them run with their creative ideas. Don't over direct those people and don't over schedule their time. Give them room to express their creativity and innovation and see what they come up with. So I think that that's kind of one of the keys that I would say is don't stifle them. Creative people are going to find a way to be creative. Let them do it inside the walls of your business and you'll be more successful.
Your books address topics not commonly taught in design school. What gaps in traditional education did you aim to fill? And why do you think these lessons are crucial for aspiring designers?
That's a great question. When I went to design school, the focus was so much on color theory, composition, typography, the aesthetics of design. But I was never taught how to create a proposal and sell a client. I was never taught how to manage a creative project and break it into phases and rounds and tasks. I was never taught communication skills that I would need to deliver work to a client or present my work to a client. I was never taught so many things that are completely necessary to be successful as a creative entrepreneur, or as a creative not even an entrepreneur, as a creative working for another agency or business. You have to have those things. And I think the gap in education, and it's gotten a lot better, but the gap was there's too much focus on the technical abilities to do the thing you're studying. And you could probably take this across a lot of different industries. A lawyer has so much focus on understanding the law and understanding the strategies of the legal system. But if they're not taught how to sit with a client and empathize for the situation that they're in and show compassion, then they're going to struggle. If they're not taught how to run the operations of a law firm, then they're going to struggle to build their own law firm someday. So how do you hire somebody? How do you hire a legal aid? What do you pay them? How do you contract them? How do you do all of these other things that relate to being a successful attorney? How do you do those things? And I think a lot of the education or traditional education system does not cover that stuff enough. And we're heading into a world that is so much more entrepreneurial than it's ever been before. So many people, because you can start a business anywhere, any type of business, you can really start anywhere. Aside from businesses that require a location, we used a restaurant as an example. It would be hard for me to start a restaurant in Marrakesh, but I could start a design agency that tries to land work from clients in Marrakesh. I could start a podcast in Marrakesh and invite in people from all over the world. I could do a lot of different kinds of business. I could start a consulting business. I could start a architecture business. I could start a whole bunch of different types of businesses that I could have anywhere in the world. And so the world is becoming so much more entrepreneurial than it's ever been. I think that the education system, traditional education system, really needs to lean into that much more than it ever has in the past.
Mike, after perusing the insightful blog posts on your site, it's clear you've acknowledged that everyone faces challenges behind the scenes. How have you navigated the unseen hurdles in your career? And what lessons have you learned from them?
Okay, that's a good question. The lesson I'm learning now in my current phase of my career is that I did not address the struggles soon enough. I would just if I had a challenge, I would take my emotional reaction to that challenge, a bad client, bad employee, a struggling time in my business, a client who doesn't pay. I would take all those things and I would just stuff them down inside my backpack and not deal with it. And then I would carry it around for 20 years. And that's where I am now. I carry around all of that stuff for 20 years because I was too busy to address those issues back then, those struggles. I didn't address them. And I think my advice is don't be me on that. If you have a challenge that you're facing, you've got to address it emotionally now and not just stuff it down, because 20 years from now, you're going to find that you're carrying around so much heavy junk in your emotions that it becomes difficult to breathe and function, and you have to figure out how to process that stuff. So don't wait to process the challenges and struggles that you go through as an entrepreneur.
Great advice. Money as a metric of success versus the impact on people's lives. How has this perspective influenced the way you've run your businesses and led your teams?
Oh, I love this. Money in the early years of my business was a motivation. And it was mostly a motivation out of fear. I was always afraid that I wasn't going to make enough money, that I wasn't going to have the money I needed to pay my bills and feed my family. I was always afraid. I had that fear. And I got to a point where I realized that that's not going to be my problem. And I had money in the bank. I had saved up money. I had money inside my business. I had always had plenty to support my financial needs. And I realized that money was not the motivator anymore. My motivation was multifaceted. throng. My number one motivation, and it's what I do now, was just being successful in what I choose to do. And how do I measure success? Oftentimes I measure success based on the quantity of people that I'm able to impact for the better. And if you look at that, is why I said yes on this podcast, AJ. We're on other sides of the world and stuff, but I love meeting people like you and having conversations like this. And you have reach to a certain batch of people that I currently don't have reach to find, because they haven't found me, but they found you, and they listen to you and your podcast, but they don't listen to my stuff. This is an opportunity for me to find more people that I can impact for the better. And I don't care if they buy a course from me or buy coaching or buy my book. I don't care if they buy any of the stuff that I have to sell. Mm-hmm. Some will, some won't. Some will just use my free content for their betterment, and I'm okay with that. I let financial gain be a byproduct of having an impact on someone else. And that's my perspective. And so I don't care if tonight I sell 10 courses or 0. I don't wake up tomorrow disappointed in my day. I'm okay, because I know I'm more excited when I have hundreds or thousands of people who watch a piece of content that I create. I'm like, oh, this is great. I didn't even get any money for it. It was all for free, but I get excited about just that reach to more people, and let financial success be a byproduct of having a positive impact on others.
Let's stay a bit the coaching and mentorship. Mike, you've mentioned that you tailor your mentoring to fit the specific needs of each business. Can you share an example of how you've customized your approach for a particular mentee?
Yeah, some of the people, everybody that I work with in mentoring is in a different phase of their business. I have an example, one person who I started mentoring a couple years ago, and in the first 7 months, he had hit $1 million in revenue and had hired 23 people. So he went from him to 23 employees and $1 million plus in revenue, and that was in 7 months' time. The advice and the things that I work on with him are completely different than the person that I mentor that is trying to find their first client. We worked on naming their business, marketing strategies to find clients. We worked on their website, design and copy. We worked on everything to get them launched, structuring their products and services, structuring their case studies. That's what we worked on. But with the person who scaled that fast to the 23-person team and $1 million in revenue in 7 months, to that person, we talked about hiring and managing cash flow and looking at his revenue and revenue projections, and can we afford that person, or do we have to wait to hire that person for X amount of dollars? We talked about all of those kinds of things. So it's a completely different approach, because everybody's business is really in a little bit different phase. Now, the thing that I love about what my background is that I was in all those chairs. I was the solo freelancer trying to go find my first client. I was that person. I was the person who had 3 employees and good revenue, but I was scared to hire beyond that. I was that person. I was the person with 20 employees and millions of dollars in revenue. I was that person too. So over the course of my career, I've had all of the experiences. So I really have an understanding, no matter where somebody is on their entrepreneurial journey of creating a creative business.
That's really good. It indicates that the concepts you advocate and instruct are those you've already applied and experienced firsthand in your own life.
Yeah, I already did it. I already did it. And I'm so happy to help other people do it. That's the thing, because I never had anybody help me. So I get a lot of joy out of that, of helping others.
Many freelancer entrepreneurs struggle with fear and uncertainty. What is the most common fear you encounter, and how do you help your mentees overcome it?
People are afraid that they're not going to have enough clients. They're afraid that they're not going to have enough money. They're afraid that their new employee isn't going to perform at a level that's sufficient to send to their client. They're afraid that the client is going to say no to their bid or proposal or design. They're going to present a design and the client's going to say no. These are the common fears that people have. They're afraid of that. I was afraid of all those things at various points in my creative journey. Those are the common ones. Now, what I'm always telling people is it's all going to be okay. It's going to work out. There's some weird thing in this life that it's all going to work out. You, as an example, you started this podcast and you're talking with entrepreneurs, and I'm sure there are times where you probably sit back and say, oh, is this worth it? Is it worth it for me to do this podcast? Do you ever think that, AJ?
Indeed, there was a fear of sending out invitations to people who might not have the time, a fear of rejection, I could say. Generally, there was a fear of the camera because I was someone who didn't often put myself out there. All these things helped me push the boundaries and overcome the fear, leading me to think, let's start. There's nothing to lose. I discussed with one of my friends on a thread about starting a new podcast. He said to me, AJ, you mentioned you would start your podcast months ago. What are you waiting for? I began making excuses, saying I was waiting for cameras and mics, waiting for this and that to prepare my setup. He reminded me that all those things were just excuses. Just start, he urged. So I ended up sending him an invite to be my guest, and I began with my phone. The rest is history now.
Yeah. So, and that's the way that it is. And what's happened? Here we are. We're sitting here talking. You've had awesome guests on your podcast before me. You're doing it. And this is what I tell the people when they're afraid, when they're in that state of fear. I tell the people, hey, it's all going to work out. The plan for you is not that you fail. That's not the plan for you in this world. I believe that everybody has the ability to find success in what they choose to pursue. And the plan is not that you're going to fail. You may have some dip moments when you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't keep the podcast going. Maybe I'll try and start doing it as a YouTube channel instead or something. You might have moments when you pivot, but you're not going to fail. You just keep trudging along over time and everything's going to work out. And I find myself telling people that all the time when they're afraid that they're never going to have another client, or they're afraid that they're going to run out of money and end up living on the street somewhere. People have these kind of extreme fears. And that's not the plan for most of the people in the world. That is not the plan that is ahead for you. You got to have some trust that it's all going to work out.
Yeah, the universe will provide.
Exactly. You got to trust it. You got to trust it. It's not going to mean that it's always going to be easy, but you got to trust that everything is going to work out over time.
Definitely.
Yeah. As you mentioned earlier, scaling a business from a solo operation to an 8-figure agency is no small feat. What would you say is the first step in making such a significant leap?
The significant step is create a vision and trust that you can achieve it. Don't be afraid to dream. This is what happens with a lot of people. They're too afraid to dream that they could achieve such a thing. So they don't do it. And if you can't envision it or dream it for yourself, then I guarantee there's no way that it's going to ever happen. It's never going to happen. You have to have the courage. You have to have the courage to create a vision and dream about it. And then, people talk about it being manifesting, that they're going to manifest this business. There's some truth in it. And it's not necessarily that the universe is going to just give it to you. But sometimes the manifestation is that we tell our brain that this is what we want. And then our unconscious thoughts, our subconscious brain goes into overdrive trying to figure out, how am I going to achieve that? How am I going to achieve that? And then we see opportunities where we wouldn't have seen opportunities. We find the courage that we didn't have otherwise to go and pursue the thing that we want to pursue, because our subconscious brain knows what our dream is, what our vision is, and it's going to work hard for us to achieve that. And I've seen that happen over and over and over again. You did it with this podcast, just as we're talking here again. you talked about it, you kicked it down the road a lot. You thought, oh, I'll just wait, I'm afraid of the camera, afraid of what if the guests say no, all the fears. But what's happened? You have guests, you're recording, we're on StreamYard, everything is working out just fine because you had the courage to envision it and dream it. Just took you a little bit to find the courage to actually act. But the first courage is to dream it.
You've helped agencies and entrepreneurs achieve remarkable revenue growth. Beyond financial metrics, how do you measure success in your mentoring programs?
I measure success by whether the person repeats with me or not. And most of the people, it's rare that I have somebody just schedule one coaching session and never talk to me ever again. Most of the people that I've coached schedule again and again and again and again. And that's what makes me feel success in my coaching program. If I can establish a relationship with someone where they become afraid to make a decision in their business without collaborating with me, then I know then I'm fine. Then I'm a successful mentor for them. I've positioned myself in a position of trust where they become fearful to make decisions without running them past me. I'm like, good, this is what I want. I don't want you to feel alone anymore. Run stuff past me. Let's talk about it and let's figure out the right next steps. When people start doing that, that's how I measure the success.
Yeah, that's a good measurement.
It's a good measurement. Because it's not everybody wants to have a 7-figure business or an 8-figure business. Some people just want to make enough money to go and live in Bali and do freelance work and sit on the beach all day and freelance at night. Sometimes that's their goal. And it's not about trying to get them to 7 figures of revenue. It's about helping them live the dream that they have. Now, either way, I can become their mentor with repeated mentoring sessions that help them achieve that goal. And I'm happy to do that for anybody.
You're such a wonderful person, Mike. You've mentioned a multi-generational love for the Chicago Bears and a personal achievement in bench pressing. How have these personal passions influenced your professional life and leadership style?
Yeah. You know what? Okay, this is a good question. That's an interesting question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. I find immense passion in things. Like when I get excited about something, I am going for it. And so the Chicago Bears, like you said, I watched the entire NFL draft that was just a few weeks ago. I pay attention to all of who's winning, who's losing. I watch every game that I can of my team. I don't watch all the games, but I just watch my team whenever I can. I pay attention to all of it. I follow the news in the off season because I just have found passion around that. Bench press or lifting weights. I've been passionate about that for decades. I went to the gym this morning, went to the gym yesterday morning. I am passionate about that. And I attack it with that same level of passion that I put into other things. I found that. And so when you talk about how do those things affect me as an entrepreneur, affect me in business or in mentoring or whatever, it's the same thing. Whatever I choose to do, I'm going to attack it with passion. And I've attacked my career with passion. What I do now, I attack with passion. I just launched another new podcast this morning and I'm super excited about that. It's so fun. It's so fun. I love it. I love that. And I attack it with passion. I want it to be great. I want it to be the brand to be great. I want to share it out to people and get people to listen because I want to provide value. I just attack it with passion. And I think that, going back to this original question of the Chicago Bears and lifting weights and bench press and things, I just take the same level of enthusiasm and passion that I put into those things and I put it into entrepreneurship and any other thing that I choose in my life. And it all yields a result for me.
Your global experiences, having lived in Colombia, traveled around the world, and spoken at international events, how has your global perspective shaped your approach to business and design?
Oh, I love that too. I love that I've been able to travel all over the world. I've spent time. I was in Dubai a year ago or so speaking at a conference. I've been to Russia a few times. I've been to Europe a few times. I've been Central America, South America, and Mexico and Canada. I've been just all over the United States. I've never been to Africa.
We would be delighted to welcome you to Africa.
I know. And I've never been to India either. I need to go to India as well because I have a lot of people that are great friends in India. Those are two places on my list but it's had an impact on me because I've found if I went back, say 15, 20 years ago, the quality of people outside of the major markets in the world, the quality was less. The quality of design, the quality of coding, it was less. Now, it is not less. There are people in India that are every bit as talented and effective in their creative services as people in the United States and all over Europe. They're every bit as effective. I'm in a mastermind group with one person. She's a marketing genius and she's in Ghana. She's originally from Nigeria. She's become a super, super good friend of mine. We've had weekly calls for a year and a half, and I really don't do any major thing in my business without discussing it with her first. And here I am with my background, 20 plus years and working at Fox and building my agency and all that stuff. But she's so talented and such a sharp marketing mind that she's my mentor in my business decision making. So I love that about the worldwide perspective that I've been able to see and uncover, that people are talented at the greatest, highest levels, and they're anywhere in the world now. It just does not matter. And I think that it's no different in Marrakesh and Morocco and everywhere else, that there are some people in your circles that are so massively talented, and they're not in New York City. They're in Marrakesh. So I love that about the globalization of business, that we can find and work with these amazingly talented people from anywhere. So great.
With your extensive background in design and business, where do you see the industry heading in the next decade, especially considering the rapid technological advancements?
It has to be strategy driven. You have to, your days of being able to just be a logo designer are numbered. Pushing the pixels around, designing the logo, making it aesthetically beautiful. That's still going to exist, but it's going to be different how that is executed. In the future of the creative industry, you have to be strategically minded. You have to be as passionate about designing a logo that's going to work for the target customer to make them fall in love with the brand and become a repeat customer. That's what you have to do. The strategic side of who am I designing for? How am I going to create something that resonates with them and makes them love the brand and fall and have that Nike level passion behind it, where they're going to buy a hat that has a Nike swoosh on it because it's got a Nike swoosh on it. How do we create that? And the strategic side, I think, is the future of the creative industry, because the tools are faster. The AI technology does some of this work for you now, the pixel pushing work. You have to start leaning heavy into the strategy side of the creative industry.
What advice would you give to entrepreneurs and founders who are trying to make their mark in the creative industry today?
My best piece of advice is that have the courage to dream it, have the courage to create a vision, get out Pinterest and create a Pinterest board that has all of the dreams that you want to have for your business. What is it going to look like when it's done? What is it going to look like when it's done? Have the courage to dream that, and then have the courage to believe that you can achieve that. I think that is such an important first step in business. And I didn't do that step until like year 5 of my business. My first 5 years, I was just a scared entrepreneur with no vision, just hoping to land the next project, and then somehow I'm going to get it done. And it wasn't until I started creating that vision that the exciting things really started happening in my agency, where the growth started to scale. We got our cool office space. We found new, bigger clients and bigger budgets. That's what I started to find, but it came after creating that vision. So I think that's, and we already talked about it a little bit, but I just want to echo that as such a strong piece of advice, that's where you start.
What are some technological trends you're currently excited about, like AI and other things? And how do you plan to leverage them in your business?
AI is the greatest brainstorm partner that was ever created. So for a creative person, open up ChatGPT and say, give me 30 hook ideas for my YouTube video. And I have never used one exactly as ChatGPT gave it to me. But when I ask for 30, I see enough little spark ideas in there that I'm like, oh, that's an interesting little angle. It's a brainstorm partner. That's what it is. Yeah. And I think that even the generative AI does the same thing. So for imagery, you can say to AI, I have, I'm going to do an illustration for this data point for an infographic. Give me 10 different ways that this could be illustrated, and then let it spit out ideas for you. Do not take the exact image and use it. I am anti that, but I love the idea of it sparking ideas for you, which is no different than you going to Pinterest and doing a search and seeing other things that people have designed, or you picking up a design book, Communication Arts Magazine, and thumbing through the pages to get inspiration for the thing that you're going to create. It was just that you got that inspiration from AI generated imagery instead of human generated imagery that you did thumbing through a magazine. But doing design research for creative projects has existed since the beginning of time. We get our inspiration somewhere. AI just makes it so that we can customize what we're asking for instead of just having to thumb through thousands of pages to find some sparks of ideas.
Mike, this has been an incredibly insightful and inspiring conversation. Thank you for sharing your personal journey, business strategies, and the powerful lessons you've learned along the way. As a creative visionary and industry innovator, it's clear you're on a mission to help businesses and individuals harness the power of design and strategic thinking. Your focus on creating impactful work and nurturing talent is a testament to your dedication to the creative industry.
I'm so grateful. And you know what? You're my first friend in Marrakesh, so I will see you there someday.
Listeners, you can connect with Michael and learn more about his work by visiting his website, www.michaeljanda.com, or his LinkedIn profile, Michael Janda. Be sure to check out his books, Burn Your Portfolio and The Psychology of Graphic Design Pricing, for invaluable insights into the design industry. Michael, thank you again for your time. I know our audience walks away feeling inspired and empowered to take their creative and business efforts to new heights. For all you listeners, be sure to tune in for our next episode of Entrepreneurship Unboxed. Until then, keep building, keep growing, and keep making an impact. This is AJ signing off.